I wanted to post a response to some of the things in a study that I found online and was able to download and read. And I was a little concerned. I've seen it cited a lot of different places. It's on accommodations provided to students with learning disabilities, particularly dyslexia, ADD, and ADHD. And it's put out by the the Pope Center in North Carolina, which does research and advocates for quality in education and high standards and academic integrity and things like that. The the paper and the study basically are sort of lifting up the concern that you have with the law regarding accommodations and with the policies of most schools and well all schools that receive federal funding, that you have these students with supposed learning disabilities who are getting accommodations which end up being things like extended time on tests, even the SATs, and note takers, and they might get out of having to fulfill certain requirements, maybe a language requirement, so on and so forth, and that you have you have a problem here. You have people who are getting away with something. They're the idea is that these accommodations are questionable in how they actually address the disability for those who have a legitimate disability. There's questions raised about, well, how strict and stringent are we in determining who does or doesn't qualify as having a disability, and are there people who are getting away with these academic interventions and getting an unfair competitive advantage, and particularly given the fact that when we look at numbers for these learning disabilities, they're going up. Disabilities don't usually go up so high, and they've gone up quite quite a bit in the past few years, and the distribution of those who have learning disabilities suggests that people in wealthier areas, that white men from the Northeast, that they're going to be more likely to have the diagnosis. So, fraught with all these problems, and as the paper ends, there's this imperative issue to be sure that there's a rigorous process to determine and in a sense safeguard access to these services, which are questionable to begin with, and against abuse, and that there needs to be better policies for doing this. And sort of what's going to happen if we don't do that is, well, there's probably going to be a lot of people who are going to start realizing and raising a voice about the lack of fairness in all of this. So, first off, I'm always a little stunned when fairness is invoked, especially at this stage of the game, when you're talking about university education and issues of disability and discrimination and things like that. I thought at this point and in such a context that ideals of justice, of equality, of what is right and ethical might be more compelling and worthy of our time and attention than what's fair, which in my mind always evokes something more along the lines of third grade, and who got more grapes on their lunch plate. But the paper, and I found a lot of the citations of it that are popping up online and in different articles and things like that, seem to um, be lending a lot of credence to these suggestions, and I don't see a lot in the paper that really establishes it. Um, Furthermore, I would say that there's not a lot of discussion that gives a good, solid reason for why these are our starting questions. Why are we starting this out with suspicion and worry? Because it doesn't sound like it's rampant on campus. Students are bothered by this, nor that faculty, by and large, are speaking out on it. Some apparently did in private when sort of cajoled. They didn't want to be identified. I'm always a little suspicious when people don't want to be identified. I think there's a covert sort of bid for um, a greater authority to be lent to one's voice. Because you could be anybody, and you could be 10, or you could be 1, or you could be 20 people. But um, in any study, we have choices about um, how we enter into it and what questions we start to ask. But going with the study, I want to point out an interesting thing, which gets at my issue about where we're starting. So there's this idea that, and we'll take the extended time as our example. There's the idea that the extended time is a problem. It's giving an unfair advantage. That this is doled out almost willy-nilly to students who come and ask for accommodations, and furthermore, it fails to really address in an individual way and in a way that's true to the disability in a lot of cases what's needed. I would have to agree that there's some truth in that part. As a person with dyslexia, the extended time was usually much more extended than was actually helpful. The fact that I had access to a computer and had a little bit of extra time to do a once over of my test was really what I needed most. And I do think you have maybe some problems there. And furthermore, I've worked with students at schools, including online, who, when they seek accommodations and are approved for them, they'll get some sort of extension of time, and a lot of times that just fails to really engage the issue, and it also unfortunately leaves the faculty member very much out of the creative, innovative process of addressing how to best devise accommodations that are going to meet the student's needs, and down the road maybe other students. Well, there was a study in 1999, and I'm going to post the reference with this, and it looked at faculty buy-in and investment and attitudes when it came to accommodations and working with learning disabled students with some of these things. What it found, certainly LD students are going to do much better with faculty who are supportive. Faculty did, like in this study, report by and large that they supported doing accommodations for people with diagnosed disabilities. But where did they resist? Where did they say no? Well, when the request was for an alternative means of assessment, a paper instead of a test, a different sort of paper, an oral presentation with an analysis instead of a paper. They also, and a lot of times faculty had real problems with that. They didn't think that was appropriate, would say no, would deny the request, and give a justification. They would also very often have a lot of resistance to things like providing lecture notes ahead of time, an outline for the lecture to students. Well, I mean, yeah, I'd have a resistance to that too, but it wouldn't be because I was some great champion of some essential element of my course. It's that I kind of depart from the outline a lot, or I don't use an outline in the way that some folks might, and I fear that it won't be helpful to you. But I think what you have here is we start to see a pattern, because when we look at what are the things that faculty were very open and willing and no problems with, well, extended time was a big one. Allowing students to tape record the lectures, something that is often offered up to students and is, for many of us, infinitely unhelpful. Because, well, with new technology, it could be potentially more helpful with that pen, but that's neither here nor there. They were very open to having students receive help from a note taker, having students receive the ability to take a private proctored test. Now, they did have a problem if the timing was done such that the instructor was expected to submit early a copy of the test, or to create a dual version so that the student had a distinct one from the one the other students had, in order to avoid cheating and things like that. Well, it seems kind of clear. You have people who may or may not buy into what accommodations are about, but certainly they want to help students, and they're going to be cooperative on those accommodations which require the least effort from them. And essentially, the ones that the faculty will support, according to the study, are the ones that really require no effort from them other than to say sure. And then sometimes it can sort of lessen their work. They don't have as many papers that they have to get back right away because the student has a little extra time. But when it comes to actually engaging with the student around the challenges and needs, and devising something that is really an accommodation in an appropriate, modified way of going about it, well, that's work. That takes analysis. That takes insight, understanding, and a sense of that you believe that there is a disability, and you understand aspects of it, and you understand enough about the people and how they learn, and how one sets up curricular aims and goals, so that you can identify what is essential to your curriculum and come up with alternative ways of going about it when the need arises. And beyond simple inertia and people not wanting to do extra work, and not that faculty aren't overworked, I'm not saying that at all, but none of us want to do something we don't have to when it feels like extra work. But on top of that, I think you probably have a lot of folks who either don't really buy in to the project, or lack the understanding. Keep in mind, most faculty, they may be experts in their field, but they have, in most cases, no coursework in teaching, in learning, in pedagogy, and minimal professional development and training. But going back to the study, so there's these concerns, particularly about things like extended time, that are given out willy-nilly and aren't well suited to the student's needs. How did that happen? How did it come about that the mandate of the ADA and the Rehabilitation Act to remove barriers and provide access to all qualified students resulted in something that is so rubber stamped, where students are sort of handed this minimally effective kind of a leg up to make up for the fact that you've been standing down here, something which is so disconnected sometimes to what the needs and educational assets sought are, that you know, why not give it to this student and this student here and this student here, and my